there was, let's say, sexual activity early in every relationship, right? And that sexual activity created a chemical bond of this feels good and there's great connection, and there was no conversation about values or vision or lifestyle. It was, we're having fun. This is a great time. We're experiencing life together, and we've got this chemical bond. This time I said, listen, there's not going to be any of that. I mean, my friends are like in shock, especially my guy friends. I'm going to get vulnerable here, but it was almost 3 months. I spent 40 nights next to her without that activity going on. And talk about self-discipline for me as someone who's driven by, who wants that a lot.
Sure.
I was just like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it until I find out like where this is going.
This podcast exists because I love talking to people and I love going deep. The purpose is to plant seeds of inspiration. We enter a space of vulnerability and relatability. And what you realize is that we are so much more alike than we are different. To quote Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home. And this show is just one step. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense. Welcome to the Pretty Intense podcast. I am so excited to have this guest on the show today. He's a friend. I have interviewed him before, which, gosh, he's going to be the first person I've interviewed twice. So that's because he's so amazing. And it's Lewis Howes. He is a New York Times bestselling author. He has 2 books. The most recent one is called The Mask of Masculinity. We talked a little bit about the fact that he's writing another book, which is going to be awesome. So we start off with talking about that. He also has an amazing and huge podcast called The School of Greatness. It's actually because of being on his podcast and 2 others when I was promoting my own book years ago that I thought, wow, that was really fun. I think I really like doing these podcasts. And then it led to doing my own. So Lewis is an incredible human being, really is like kind of a man of service. And just, that was one of the things we talked about is just how, what is his role, being a voice and a leader. And, he shares what he wants to be for people and, what he wants to help men step into, which is really just a place of vulnerability and being honest. We just talked about the dynamics of relationships, that incredible lesson of standing up for yourself and not in a negative way, but just knowing who you are and creating boundaries and being really clear about that and just what that brings into your life. Transparency is a beautiful thing when it's done with love and with your inner child, as we talked about a lot, in mind, because when we're out of alignment with that is when the problems start and our compromises turn into resentment and it's a spiral into a place that's nowhere you want to be. So just super vulnerable guy, super, super kind. And we had a really, really great conversation. Man, I'm inspired by him, and I think you will be too. Enjoy the episode. How are you?
Good. I missed your face.
Oh, miss your face.
Miss your hugs, even though I've only hung out with you a few times, but I feel like we give good hugs. So.
Oh, yeah. When I said who I was interviewing today, my boyfriend was like, I would like to go to dinner with him. And he's like, I've heard he's a great guy. And I'm like, he is a great guy. I asked if he wanted to talk about anything today or promote anything. And he was like, nope, just in service, just happy to do it. And I'm like, you just are that good of a guy.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, when I have a book or something, then I'll make sure to promote it. I'll hit you back up and say, hey, let's promote the book.
Done. Not a problem. How long has it been since your last book? The Mask of Masculinity was your second book, right?
4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. So I'm actually right now in talks with coming out with the book the end of next year. Yeah, so I'm working on that right now.
End of next year means you bet you're going to have to get started.
I'm just getting started in the last few weeks. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So it's either going to be end of next year or maybe January at the latest. We're still figuring out when it's going to come out. But I've been researching it in my mind for years, working on this, but now it's like, okay, let's make it happen.
Well, would you
it'll be 5 years. It's about the greatness mindset, and it's about eliminating self-doubt. I think self-doubt is the biggest killer of dreams. I think there are 3 main fears that we as human beings have. The fear of failure, which a lot of people have. They're afraid to fail. Sure. And so they don't take action on what they want or their goals or their dreams because of that insecurity or fear around, what if I fail? The second big, I never had that as an athlete. I don't think you ever had that, because as athletes, we are trained. Well, you got to learn, you got to make mistakes every day to learn, to get better, to help you become successful and accomplish your goals. So I knew failure was a part of the journey of like practicing to accomplish success. And there's a great meme online. I'm going to abbreviate what the meme says because I can't remember specifically. But there's a meme of a photo of a baby walking, or like trying to walk. And the quote or the meme says something like, children fall 1,000 times before they learn to walk. And never does the child think, maybe this walking thing isn't for me.
Right. I think I've seen that.
You know what I mean? It's like he doesn't.
Right.
The child doesn't think, oh, yeah, I fell 20 times. I scratched my face. My elbow's bleeding. I hit the back of my head. Maybe I should just crawl the rest of my life because I keep failing. And I think once the other two fears come into play, people are just afraid of failure. The second fear, which I never understood personally because I always wanted to accomplish my goals, was the fear of success. And when I speak or when I talk to people and I ask them, are you more afraid of failure or success? I'm always surprised. A lot of people say that they're afraid of success. And again, this didn't make sense to me because
Right.
I wanted to achieve, I wanted to succeed. That's what I was going after. And I would ask people like, why are you afraid of success? And they would say something like, well, the pressure, the pressure that comes with success, the weight you have to carry, the idea that you have to live up to something now. Like, I've accomplished this, I have to keep doing this, otherwise then I'm a failure. Or if I go and pursue my dreams, my family won't go with me, or they'll kind of outcast me, or my friends, my peers, I'll be leaving the tribe, the community. And I'm afraid to kind of lose my friendships and be more alone or independent. So that fear of success is strong for people. Those were never my fears.
Yeah.
My fear was something else. And it's the third fear, which I think a lot of people have as well, which is the fear of judgment and criticism and other people's opinions. And I was never afraid of the failure side because I knew as an athlete I needed to make mistakes in order to improve, to get better, to achieve. I always wanted to be successful, so that was not a fear of mine. The pressure of when I succeeded, it was more of just like people's opinions of me, or people doubting me, or people criticizing me and judging me.
Oh man, I lived that.
Right? And so at the core, usually someone has one of those or maybe all of those.
I'm the first one.
Right. Fear of failure?
Yep.
Yeah. And so at the center, so if you made it like a 3-circle Venn diagram, at the center of our fears is I'm not enough.
Of course. That was totally my problem. That is totally my problem. Yes, it's a dad wound. Yes.
Exactly. So
and
I'm
then
not enough.
Expressed it in the mom wound.
Yeah, exactly. And then the inner child is always in pain and suffering. So I literally, this has been a year of therapy for me. I've done therapy every 2 weeks the entire year since January. And
I am with you. I had 2 therapists at one point that I talked to every week.
Yeah, the first 6 months was like an every week. Like I was in couples therapy for the first like 5.5 months, I guess.
Well, at least you tried.
And it was every week. It was like 5-7 hours at a time on a day. Like we'd go on Saturdays and do it together.
Oh God.
And it was so intense. But as an athlete, we will do whatever it takes. We're like, I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep going, whatever it takes. Leave no regrets. So that was my mindset.
Not even a single letter.
Exactly. Yeah. And I said after I realized that in the previous relationship that our visions weren't aligned and we weren't a great match values and vision wise, I said, you know what? I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to do this for the rest of the year for myself and see what that does for me. And I have this photo. I don't know if this is a practice that one of your therapists ever did with you. But I have this photo. I have this photo on my phone. Can you guess what this photo? Can you guess what this photo is that I've had since January?
I don't know, maybe your inner child. It's you as a kid.
It's me as a kid. I don't know if you can see it.
It's just me and my dogs.
There you go. Yes. So this is a photo I've had
Wow.
since January. And
Look how cute you are.
and my therapist was like listening. And I said, why do I keep choosing specific types of relationships?
Right.
Not that
Patterning.
these people are bad and wrong, not that,
Right.
nothing, just not the
Right.
right match for me.
Right.
And there was, I kept doing it because I kept abandoning myself. I kept abandoning myself on my values and my vision to create peace and make someone else happy. As opposed to being peace and healing that I am not enough inner child wounds,
Oh,
to creating boundaries and then creating from a place of standards and agreements, not I'm constantly having my agreements broken by a partner and giving in to try to make them happy to create peace.
yeah.
And so it's been an incredible year
Yeah.
of reflection, of getting feedback, of healing that, and and really diving back into, again, to those three fears that a lot of people have. Is the core of any of those fears is I'm not enough. I'm not pretty enough, not talented enough, smart enough, whatever it might be. And I think when we learn to fully accept and heal what we've been through and accept where we're at right now, there's a foundation that we can move forward with, a mindset we can move forward with, that is a place of creation and pursuing our uniqueness and our gifts in the world, and putting ourselves out there in a way that no matter we win or lose, people love us or hate us, we do it from a place of joy and a place of peace because there's inner acceptance. When I had, I'm not sure, did you know Kobe pretty well, or did you
I
interview
didn't.
him?
I only met him once. I forced my way into an introduction at the ESPYs one time to say
That's
hi.
cool.
And
That's cool.
my publicist at the time was he was a humongous fan. And so I got him to say hi, like wanted to introduce, I introduced myself so that I could introduce him. That's it though. I didn't know him.
Yeah. When I interviewed him, I only met him for, an hour. And so I'm not like I'm close with him or was close with him. But when I interviewed him, he said when he was, I can't remember if he was 12 or 13, but when he was like 12 or 13, he was playing basketball in a summer league. And he didn't score 1 point, he said, the entire summer. It was like 2 or 3 months. He didn't score once. And it was somewhere around 10, 11, 12 or something like that.
Wow.
And I said, what made you want to come back? And like, after you failed miserably the whole summer, why did you want to come back and play basketball again, like the next year or whatever? And he said, I'm paraphrasing this, but he said that my father told me that he's going to love me no matter what. He's like, I don't care if you score all the points or if you score no points, I'm going to love you no matter what.
Wow.
And he said that gave him permission to pursue something without one of those fears, without the fear of failure, without the fear of success, and the fear of judgment. And I think when we can learn to love our own selves no matter what, not needing that from someone else, or
Right.
Whether it was your father or your siblings or whatever it may be. For me, it was peers, being judged by peers. When we can learn to accept ourselves for who we are and create from that space of inner love and inner peace, which is hard to do. It's hard to get there.
Oh yeah.
That's when I feel like we can create some amazing things in the world. So that's the premise of the book.
Wow.
The greatness mindset.
That's really cool. That's going to be a really powerful book, as they all are from you.
I appreciate it.
Because it comes from your own experiences.
Yeah.
Like when you're speaking from pure experience, there's depth, there's emotion connected to it, there's truth. And I think that truth holds a frequency. And so there's an energy and a frequency within the book and the writing that's undeniable, because it's not just a bunch of words that, we've heard a million times written in a spiritual book or written in like a self-help book or a, go get 'em kind of book. It's like your life come to life, alive on the pages.
Yeah.
I don't know how, you're a pretty open guy, but we can push the brakes anytime. But I'm curious, because I think that this idea that, I love that we're talking about self-help and about looking in the self and the inner child and the way that things relate to our childhood. And, it's something that I've been working through for years now. And I know you've been working on for even longer. And, I think giving some examples and just talking through how that goes, because I feel like there's so much anxiety and so much stress in the world, and especially nowadays. And it's like, Maybe we can just sort of shed some light from our own experiences, just how that looks and how that can show up in our life. And we can maybe learn how to cope better, because that inner peace comes from making peace with those things yourself. So like, what was sort of the first big hurdle that you came across or got over in therapy and with the process of therapy? Because sometimes my breakthroughs came on my own, but maybe the impetus was a therapy prompt or something to do with it. So like, do you remember what the kind of first thing was where you were I don't know why I'm crying?
Yeah, exactly. I started my healing journey 8 years ago. Yeah. Where I started doing therapeutic experiences, workshops, therapies that allowed me to start heal certain parts of what Joe Dispenza says, the memories of the past, because these are memories that we either amplify or diminish in our thought, in our memory. So there's an event that occurs, we have a memory of the event, and we either make it 20 times more grandiose than it was, which is probably what I do, have done. I went through this, and this is how it was, but was it really how it was, or is that how our memory is? Or we diminish certain things. I really didn't do this well, or that, whatever it might be. And so for many years, I've been doing therapeutic experiences. And I talk about this publicly, where at the beginning, it was healing the sexual abuse that I faced when I was a kid, which was really blocked inside of my body for 25 years. I never told anyone. And that took a couple of years of unwinding and surrendering to and letting go. And I thought I'd done all the work. I was like, okay.
Isn't it always the case?
Yeah. Then I was like, every couple of years, I'm like, oh wait, why am I still like struggling with something? So
new level, new devil.
Exactly. And this time I was realizing that, sure, I became a lot less reactive and triggered in the real world because I'd healed something where there had been abuse, right? I'd healed something where there was a trauma. So I felt a lot less reactive, whereas before I turned 30 and started doing this work, I was a very triggered and reactive person. I was a fun-loving guy, but when I felt under attack, like mentally and emotionally, I would react.
What triggered you?
I mean, it was always the feeling of when I felt someone was trying to take advantage or abuse me. It's like abuse my generosity, take advantage of me, use me for something without like a good intention of just like, hey, we're friends, but they're always trying to angle something or abuse, or, if it felt like that, I felt triggered, and I didn't know why. Which plays
into the sexual abuse, right? Exactly, that's sort of the parallel later.
Yeah,
right?
Being taken advantage of when I was, 5-year-old. And so, but I still struggled in all my intimate relationships. Like I was better in business and friendships in the world, but I still struggled in intimate relationships. And I didn't know why. And I kept choosing relationships. Again, all wonderful individuals. I have nothing bad to say about them. It's all my responsibility of choosing and abandoning certain things about my vision to make something try to work. And there was a moment in therapy earlier in the year where this has been a pattern in the last decade from all the relationships I've been in.
So this was earlier in the year this year.
Yes. Okay. And there was a pattern in the last probably every relationship I've been in, but I'm thinking of the last 10, 12 years of the different intimate relationships I've been in. There would always come to a point where I'd feel a sense of like tightness and pressure in my chest in every relationship. And I'd feel more and more stress and tightness and almost like kind of heart palpitations at times. And this kind of like underlying feeling of trappedness and stress and like anxiety in my chest. It was always in my chest and eventually go to my throat. And I was just kind of like, it wouldn't happen right away. It was like 6 to 8 months in every relationship I started to feel this. And then I would say, okay, I'm an athlete. This is not going to fail. I'm going to make this work. So what can I do? How can I be better? How can I make you happy? How can I improve this relationship?
Yeah.
Let's go to therapy. Let's do this together. And I always thought this was weird. That I would suggest therapy to every past relationship and say, I really want to do therapy because I care about you. I care about us. I love you. I want to make this work. And something's not feeling right. And they would all say no, they don't want therapy. And I was like, what? I feel like every woman would die if their boyfriend, right? If their boy, Yes. And I was like, come on, like, this makes no sense to me. You're like the one woman. And I kept choosing the one woman that didn't want therapy. And I was like, what? And anyways, I realized I was dating patterns. And again, nothing wrong or bad about it, but it was a pattern. And in this past experience, it was the same thing. For a year, I was like, I really want us to do therapy. I think it'd be important. I remember saying I would love for us to do therapy in the beginning when things are good. So we just continue to like get things cleared and we grow in a vision together.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. And then after a year of it kind of being up and down, right? Some good moments, but then a lot of like down moments. I remember it was just like, we can't do this anymore. Like, this isn't going to last. We either need some support or I don't know what we're going to do because it's too up and down for me. It's not sustainable. And finally, after a year of asking for this, we finally were able to make the therapy happen. And it was extremely profound for me because it got me to have someone with a different perspective see the whole picture. And it got me to talk about these things and step back and be like, wow, why am I choosing to stay in this? Why is keeping me motivated to stay in this? And how can I take full responsibility for why it's turning out this way? And there was a moment in therapy where literally like the pain in my chest came together and kind of disintegrated into a ball, into like peace and freedom, and like just disintegrated. And it was the weirdest thing that I've ever felt because it felt physical transformation in a moment. I had just like this awareness moment. I always used to feel like I was trapped, like I needed to make it work and I could not end the relationship. I was not willing to end the relationship. So I would just stay in it and keep trying to make someone else happy as opposed to not abandon myself. So what I realized is that I was abandoning my inner child, the needs that I had over and over again for someone else. And I thought it was unselfishness as opposed to coming together into a partnership with, here's who I am, here's who you are. Do you accept who I am right now? And do I accept who you are right now? And the partners that I was choosing to be with never fully accepted me. They wanted me to change constantly. And I chose those relationships, so I can't blame them. I take responsibility for staying in a relationship where people wanted to change me consistently. And I just chose that I want to keep the peace, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this person happy. But they were never happy. No matter how much I changed and how much I did, they would always get upset at something. And that's when I realized, like, I don't need to stay in relationships. I can end it, and I'm not a bad person. Because I always thought, like, if I end this, I'm a bad guy. I'm going to hurt someone. And, what if they say something bad about me? And then judgment. So my thing was
like the
fear,
third thing of the fear. That's
fear
there
of judgment.
it is.
And then I was just like, I was so held back by that fear of, well, what if people think bad? What if they say something that's not true that I don't have control over? And then people think I'm a bad guy or whatever, or my reputation, whatever. And then I just got to a point where I was like, none of this pain is worth anyone's opinion about me anymore. And I'd rather feel free and let people think whatever they want to think than be stuck and trapped in this emotional relationship that I'm choosing to put myself into. No one's forcing me.
Yeah.
And that awareness just gave me the sense of like peace that I was like, there's no amount of abandoning myself that is worth it, no matter what the consequences are. So it's been
wow. So
there's constant learnings over the last 6 months.
So was amazing. This is the part I'm curious about. Can you see how that was a dynamic in your familial situation?
Everything, yes.
Did you play the role? Because like, as an example, if I'm going to share to be vulnerable and help people understand, like my wound was not being good enough because I was always pushed by my dad. So like I found partners that would push me and that I wasn't good enough for. And then what I didn't realize is I would act like my mom and abandon myself emotionally. That's the part that came later that I didn't realize I was doing. And so can you see the pattern and how that played out in your parental situation?
100%. It's 100%. I mean, it's very interesting to look back, and parent dynamics are beautiful and messy at the same time.
Oh yeah. I mean, we love them, but it doesn't,
exactly.
I always try and say, it's like, God, every parent is going to give their kids something, because you're going to love them too much. You're too little. It's just the way it goes. Exactly. Get over it. It doesn't matter. It's the human experience.
So what I realized this year, if I look back, my mom always wanted to keep the peace. Mm-hmm. So she would abandon herself no matter what was happening. She would stay calm and relaxed. She would give in to whatever to kind of make my father like happy. And my father had more, let's say, I don't know if I would, it's interesting because he had a massive transformation at one point in his life and completely changed after I turned 13. But before 13, he was a lot more challenging to be around, let's say, and very loving, like would put me to bed every night and kiss me and hug me and affectionate. But it was just like, he had some narcissistic traits. I don't know if he was like full on, but he had some narcissistic traits. And I think my mom would do whatever to keep the peace. And so as I look back at it, I have chosen to date women with, I would say, narcissistic traits. And for whatever reason, I was lured in by something hooked me in. And
learn the lesson. That's what you were hooked in by.
But I kept repeating it over and over. And
I get it. We all do.
Yeah. And then I took on the role of my dad was extremely charismatic and amazing and smart and intelligent and, a great guy.
A lot of narcissists are.
I know, exactly. I just had Dr. Ramani.
Oh God, I interviewed her too.
She's incredible. It just came out last week. And I literally didn't even know what narcissism was until like a month ago.
Oh my God, really?
When I've been studying this now, and I'm just like seeing all these patterns from previous relationships.
Oh yeah.
And I asked her, and I go, because I was having so many aha moments in the interview with her, and I was just like,
yeah,
I feel like everything you're saying in narcissism, I feel like this is certain things that I went through. And I said, why do you think that I might have been someone attracted to those traits, whether they were full on or spectrum or a little bit, whatever. And we probably all have some little narcissism somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I said, why do you think I was attracted to this? And she said, athletes have a high tendency to either be extreme narcissists or be attracted to narcissists. And I said, why? And she said, because you have a do whatever it takes mentality.
Right.
You'll fight till the end. You'll do whatever it takes. And I was like, that's what I did. I was like working on therapy for months. I was like, I'll stay in this for years to try to make it work. As opposed to quitting, right? The idea of quitting and ending the relationship. That was my biggest fear, ending a relationship where there was connection, where there was love, where there was intimacy, where there was fun times. And so anyways, I digressed because I was fascinated by what I'm learning from that. And
I also think there's another part of it. I also think that there's another little part of it where we're also trying to correct the original wound.
Absolutely.
And so we think we attract these partners because we think deep down, like we can correct the original wound.
We can heal it. We can fix it.
Exactly. If I can fix this one person, it means it wasn't me. It means that I can change them. It means that this doesn't need to be the pattern and the reality and the way that it was. But the problem is that we never can. And so the pattern just repeats itself until we, face it.
And Dr. Ramani said, I go, will the narcissist ever change? She says, they won't change. And I go, so what do you do if you're in a relationship with one? And she's like, you cannot change them. You either need to leave or you need to have radical acceptance, knowing that your feelings will just be shouted into an abyss. Yeah. And you won't have anyone to be able to connect with on that. And I go, that seems like a miserable existence.
Isn't it the most fascinating human dynamic ever? And the thing is about narcissists is that they all, I'm an expert now. They all truly, I had
you've watched every video of it.
every video. I mean, I knew basically everything that she was saying in the interview because I had watched so many hours of her and everybody. So what I wanted her on for was to share the information because she's an expert,
She's great.
But the fascinating thing I find in psychology is that they all fit into the same profile and they don't even know they're narcissists. And it's like,
crazy.
It makes me
Well,
think we're zeros and ones.
well, that's what she said. I go, give me some of the examples of what a narcissist might be. She's like, well, a narcissist, well, she said it's extremely hard to diagnose a narcissist,
Right.
like as narcissistic personality disorder, because it takes multiple sessions in therapy in order to be able to get to a point of a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, very rarely will you see a narcissist go to therapy. And I go, oh, none of my ex-girlfriends, I always wanted to go, and none of them wanted to go. I was like, that's interesting. Not saying that they were full-on narcissists or whatever, but it's interesting that there's a resistance to feedback, that there's a resistance to looking within the mirror and saying, you know what, maybe I do have some challenges that I could take ownership on and improve on, and I'm not perfect. And so anyways, it's been a fascinating month just from that understanding. But for me, the dynamic goes back to, I think I always attracted women without even being aware of it.
Yeah.
That once it got to a point of, oh, we're not aligned on our values and our vision. Not that it's right or wrong, we're just not aligned. I would say, well, we've created this incredible dynamic and connection and had these fun times, so I'm just going to do whatever it takes to make you happy to make this work.
Yeah.
And that was my lesson, to learn how to walk away when something wasn't in alignment with my higher self.
Right.
And so this has been a profound year of continued healing of my little Lewis, who I abandoned for 30 plus years to create peace, to try to make someone happy with who I was and change myself to please them, the way I watched my mom do that with my dad.
I cried so much for my inner child. Like, I would literally hug myself.
I did the same. I did this. But did you hug I did an exercise one time. I did an exercise one time that made me weep like a child, where I first did Wim Hof and started breathing and just channeling it and moving the energy throughout my body. And then I was meditating afterwards, and I did an exercise where I was laying down, and I would see my 5-year-old self that was sexually abused, and I was holding my 5-year-old self. And then I had a moment where I was having a conversation with my 5-year-old self saying, I got you, we're here now. And then I immersed, I put him into me and was hugging myself just like that. It was crazy experiences.
Oh man. Wow. I feel like this, I remember doing something very similar, and it was I think I even made a post about it. It was I've got you. I always have. It's
oh my gosh,
the inner self, I've got you and I always have. It's even through the shit, you're and I always have. That's why you're here now. And it's the true self. I just got done talking to Kimberly Snyder. She has a new book coming out, and
nice.
There's a lot of talk about the true self, and the true self is so subtle. The inner child, the higher self, whatever you want to call it. It's so subtle and so quiet. And it's when I looked at my inner child, when I first started this practice and this dynamic and learning, my inner child was literally stuck in the top of a building in a dome that was concrete. And there was a tiny little window hole out it and no words. Then the inner child came down and was in the bottom of this structure and was at the door, but still wouldn't say anything. And it was this process of letting the inner child emerge. And I never gave it a voice. I never paid attention to it. I should have put a picture of my little self on my phone too.
Still time to do it.
Yeah, true. That's true. Sorry, Ella. But as my dog lays next to me. But it's the practice of getting in touch with that voice and that energy and that message and that truth. It's so subtle because the ego is so associated with what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the ego is generally a little bit of a nemesis, but that's just because it's short-sighted. All it's trying to do is mitigate against pain. And so, the pain of being rejected, it goes, oh, that's okay. We'll adapt, right? The ego goes, no, that's fine. We'll just adapt. And what you need to learn how to do is balance them out give the inner child, give your higher self a voice, and bring the ego down and allow it to have some pain. But like the ego doesn't want to ever be in pain. And, you know, it's just this dynamic that we go through in life. And so, you know, that inner child stuff is really, really powerful. Did your inner child have anything that he wanted to say? I'm guessing it's a he.
Yeah. Let me think back to that moment. I mean, I think he was just really scared and uncertain and unsure and felt very alone. That's what my inner child felt. And so when I was having a conversation, it sounds weird to say, when I was having a conversation with my inner child, but when I was having a conversation, I just said, you're not alone. I'm here. You're safe. I'm protecting you. I got your back. We're in this together. Look how far we've come.
Yes.
You know, and that conversation was really powerful for my 5-year-old psychological self to hear, because I think, you know, as Joe Dispenza says, that the memory of the past, we're stuck in this old memory, and we're bringing the past pain to the present, and we're never able to create a peaceful, powerful, authentic future if we're still living in the memory of a painful past, as opposed to healing, having wisdom. Not saying it was a fun or cool thing that you experienced, but having wisdom around it and being able to make more conscious, authentic decisions from that wisdom of peace and acceptance. Again, going back to I am enough, at the being at the core, not I am not enough. Yeah, and I was just interviewing Dr. David Perlmutter yesterday, and he was saying that, I mean, I think a lot of neuroscientists talk about this, but there's 2 parts of the brain. He said the fear-based part of the brain, which I believe is called the amygdala, and then the prefrontal cortex, which is the future-thinking, compassionate part of the brain. And if we have a memory of the past that is constantly scary and shameful and insecure or hurtful, then whenever we experience a moment or an event that triggers that pain, we go into the part of our brain, which is the fear-based part, the amygdala part, which it's nearly impossible to react from a compassionate, calm place when that part of the brain is triggered. And so healing those traumatic parts of the past or whatever we have allows us to then, when the event occurs, maybe it still startles us and maybe there's some like frustration or sadness or anger, but we're able to get back to a calmful part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, to allow us to choose. It's like the adult in the room as opposed to the child in the room, reactive. And we're able to make an adult decision as opposed to a painful child decision. I think it's fascinating when we learn. I keep learning about this stuff, and I'm like, it's fascinating.
I love psychology, and you know, it's like, you know, people like Bruce Lipton and guys like that study this sort of stuff, these scientists. But you know,
I've never had Bruce on. Is he good?
I haven't, but he's booked finally.
Ooh,
so I think he's booked for January or February. I'm really excited. He talks about epigenetics a ton, and just, oh my God, I love that. But one of the things that he says many times is just how your subconscious programming is established, which is 95% of how you operate in the day, established from the last trimester through the first sort of 6, 7, 8 years at the most, 6, 7 years of your life. And so it's not a shock that your inner child's 5. Most of the time it is at that age, because that's when those subconscious programs, that's why we can't see it either. And that's the sort of fascinating experience of being human, is that it takes, since we can't see ourselves, it takes the outside world to reflect it to us through patterns, through triggers in relationships.
Same relationships. Yeah.
And the relationships, totally the most like, the biggest one where we get our lessons, because it's so emotional for us, right? Like we can kind of step aside from mom and dad sometimes, you know, we go, they live there, we live here, but especially when you're in a partnership with someone, like that's where it's in your face every day. And that's where the biggest and it's like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when I always think to myself, okay, like growing is painful. growing pains. Like there's always going to be painful. And I think to myself, but the next time I have a growth spurt, it's not going to be so bad. Like I'm ready for it. And then it comes and it's just as shitty as the last one.
Right.
And I'm like, why is it so bad? And then I'm like, at least I keep coming back quicker and quicker and quicker to going, because it's supposed to be hard. And the journey never ends. It's just how quick can you bring yourself back to a place of receptivity and interiority where you're like, what's my part in this? And my saying this last year has been, oh, well, that's been my coping mechanism. It used to be try harder. Maybe you can relate to that one.
Yes.
But then this year I was like, this happened, or this one. Oh, well.
Oh, well. Yeah.
Oh, well.
That's great.
Do you ever have little mantras or anything like that sort of you have from time to time that like can pull you through?
I do, especially like when I'm running long distance, which is extremely hard for me. I have different mantras there where I'm just like, no, I'm powerful, I'm peaceful. I'm just like, I'm powerful. I just stay relaxed and strong at the same time. But yeah.
Do you feel like through a lot of these lessons, do you feel like anything's changed? Like sometimes your perception on yourself or your perception on even the work that you do, the world itself, like, are there some fundamentals that have really shifted for you?
Something happened recently I'm just clear that in certain relationships, whether it be business or friends or intimate, I'm setting my standards for what I want and what my vision and my values are in that relationship sooner, so that it's not unclear.
So it's like a boundary.
Boundary. And I make sure that the other person is in alignment and hears it and understands it. Not that I'm like, okay, if you don't do this, then we're not friends or whatever, but just like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm creating. This is what I'm up to. This is my values, my vision. And so if someone's crossing that, I'm much quicker to just be like, okay, this person is not in alignment with what I'm creating or what our business is creating or my intimate relationship. And so my girlfriend now is just clear on my values and my vision because I'm clear. And I'm clear on what hers are. And so we accept those values and vision and we don't cross boundaries. Or if I did, I take responsibility and I would work to improve it. But if someone else is doing that in front of me, I'm just much quicker to say, okay, is this something that was intentional or unintentional? And I'm resetting the standard right now. And if this is not something you're aligned to, then cool. We don't need to be in this type of relationship right now, or I can pull back on certain things. And it's just been a lot clearer for me. As before, I think I was always trying to keep the peace.
Sure.
And say, okay, it's okay. I'll let it pass and no big deal. And then it just happens again. It's okay. And me being more and more frustrated and resentful without actually creating the boundary and actually standing up to that boundary. So it's been an insightful year of creating that in friendships, relationships, everything, business,
work, relationship. So how did that, how do you do that? Tell me what the process was like to get to the point where you even knew what the hell your boundary was. Like, how do you even know?
I have my values listed out, for my business. I have
they're written down.
Yeah. I have my values for my business. I have that everyone sees and it's on our job postings. Here are our values. We communicate it in the interview process. We talk about it on team calls on a monthly basis. Hey, let's go over our values just so people are constantly reminded. And then, there's certain times we need to make examples of like, okay, this person crossed a boundary and it's not okay with us in our business. So we had to let this person go. And as opposed to what I used to do, which was be frustrated and hurt and resentful or anxious around it, it's more like, okay, I had a moment that this sucks. Someone crossed a boundary and it was a pretty bad boundary. And I was just like, okay, this sucks. And I was like, do we give them another chance? Or is this something that just doesn't align? Like it's so, out there that it's like, you can't come back from this.
Yeah.
And I was like, my old self would have said, let's just tell them like, I can't do this again. It's, and give them another chance. But this was a complete cross of a boundary. It wasn't a mixed thing. It was a complete cross. And I just said, listen, I'm not going to get angry or react. This is frustrating and it's upsetting, but we need to let this person go within the next 24 hours. Like I don't care what it takes. We got to let this person go. There's no trust anymore. It's a complete cross of a boundary. And I'm not here to react. I'm not going to get mad. It sucks. It is what it is. We invested in this person. It was time and energy, but it's not a good cultural fit with our values. And that happened this week. And I remember being like, yeah, it still sucked. It still was like, had some energy in my chest, but I was like, I didn't need to react. I didn't get frustrated. I didn't like text this person an angry thought. I was just like, okay, let's just move on and get back towards our vision. As opposed to focusing on something that happened in a bad way. It's just like, what can we do to move forward? So that's what I'm practicing now, as opposed to allowing things to keep, that's crossing the boundary.
How did it feel after?
For me, it felt great, which I'd never done it before. So for me, I see the masterpiece in people. I want to give them every chance possible. But this was it was clear to me. It wasn't a gray area. It was clear.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I need to do this for myself and for our team, to protect our team from someone doing this, because we can't allow people to do these certain things that happen. So for me, it just became clearer, because I think that I continue to do the work for myself, that I'm able to recognize it better.
Yeah.
And that awareness and recognition gives me clarity to take action.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself too, and just in business and
really?
Just actually in relationships too. I just never listened. But you have this sort of feeling at some point where you're just like, I don't know about this. And you know what? It doesn't really get any better. It really doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
No, like that's the bummer about it all. It's like rarely do things really get better. I do believe people can change. I just don't think that. I think human nature is to do the minimum unless they get, that's why people have to hit rock bottoms, because, it takes something like that to transform. It's not like, you work here, there's a really terrible mistake and it was go completely against our fundamentals and our values, but we're going to give you another chance.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
That's not really a rock bottom for someone. That's like,
no, it's not.
And
it's
so
not.
A lot of times the change takes place in like deep alchemy and like really in painful things. And so I don't know, that's my only 2 cents about it, is it tends to not get better usually, whether it's a relationship or a partnership or work situation.
And what I've realized is that you can't really pull people up. They have to want to come up, right?
100%.
You're not going to be able to change. You can't change someone. They need to want to change themselves and be motivated by something greater. And then you could support them and help elevate them and be and be an accountability friend or partner or leader for them. But you can't push people to want to grow. They need to want it from within.
Yeah. Gosh, I was just listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with a couple of guys, and they were talking about just like the state of the world. And, the one thing that was hit on in it that resonated the most with me was just that it's, they're trying to come up with some solution to the world's problems, which essentially is outside of you. And the one that makes the most sense and that was brought forward was just, people have to change. And it's like, if you kind of look into this utopian sort of through this utopian lens, if everyone decided to just like live in integrity and be true and honest and live from their heart and be kind, like immediately everything just changes. Everything changes, but that takes everyone doing that and accountability. Right. And that truly, I think, is the most important thing that we can all learn for ourselves is accountability. It's like my therapist said to me last year, the most important sentence she ever said, because I was in the middle of blaming everyone for things, especially my parents. And she's like, no one holds the keys for you. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah. And I cried because I was like, that's a lot of responsibility. And she's like, well, you don't have to do it alone, but it is the process. And so how do you you have a huge voice, you have a huge platform, you're a leader. Like, what do you feel is your role in that in that scope of awareness that the self is the most important. Like, what is it that you're trying to do? What are you trying to tell people?
Oh man, I think you said it. The keys are within you, and I think a lot of us are just so distracted all day long that we don't take time to listen, to hear what those keys are inside of us. You know, that intuition. There's a reason why something feels off in your chest or your throat or your stomach, because something is off. So it's time to listen to see what that is. Are you off? Is something else off in your life? Are you out of integrity or someone else? Like, what can you do to realign to your greater authentic self? And I think I personally try to be the best example I can be at this season of my life. I tell people on my show all about the mistakes and the challenges and the insecurities that I've worked to overcome and face, just like you do. And I think there's not a lot of, or I should say, I don't see a lot of examples of men talking about, like, I did a year of therapy and I'm healing, and I've got a photo of my 5-year-old self on my phone, and I'm healing. I don't hear a lot of men talking like that. Not saying I'm better than or, you know, more emotionally evolved or something. I just think I'm doing my best to be an example, to show other men that it's okay, and other women that it's also okay to be with men who want to do that. Because I think what I've learned from my personal experience of writing The Mask of Masculinity, going on tour, talking about these topics of kind of men being more vulnerable, men healing, men talking about their emotions, men expressing themselves in vulnerable ways and sharing their shame, which when I grew up was not a thing that you were allowed to do as a boy or a man.
Right.
It was really looked down upon and made fun of, you know, called all the names that, you know, you're called to make you look weak. And it's funny, I remember in my last relationship crying one time, being like very vulnerable, and my girlfriend being like, not being able to handle it. Like, she couldn't handle me crying, and she was like, it just looks like you're really weak. Like, I know that's the wrong thing to say, but that's how I feel, because it's how I've been conditioned.
Yeah.
You know, it's how I've been conditioned, that crying. So she never cried, right? She didn't cry because she thought it made you're weak. And I was just like, well, I'm going to keep open. If I feel something, I'm going to express it. It's not like I was crying all the time, but there was a few moments when we were going through some tough stuff, and I was just like, here's what I'm going through. What I've witnessed is a lot of women saying they want their male partner to be vulnerable and sensitive and be more emotionally flexible, and yet when the man is finally like, okay, I'm gonna reveal this, I'm gonna talk about my shame, and I'm gonna allow myself to cry in front of my wife or my girlfriend or whatever, my partner, I have heard the men tell me that when I did that, the woman shut down, like their partner shut down, they couldn't handle it. They're like, well, I'm freaking out right now, so I need you to be strong. So I'm just trying to do my best to express myself that way,
Sure.
and to take down the stereotypes that you can't have a photo of your inner child, you know, and do these things as a guy with a platform. So that's what I'm just trying to do my best, and as I figure it out.
To live by example. You do an incredible job of that. I thank you. I thank you. It's the reason why, you know, my boyfriend's like, he's a great, I've heard great things. He seems like a great guy. Let's have dinner with him. Sure. Because you're willing to go there. And he's a very emotionally intelligent and aware guy himself. Good. So what do you think? Like, this is more of like a curiosity, because, you know, depending on who you listen to or talk to, or even what you think, I mean, people like Jordan Peterson and stuff, it's like a man should be a man. And there's other people that talk about this too, but like, I do think that there's a difference between men and women. I don't think that they're all identical, but I think there's some generalities of like things that your one is a little better at than the other.
Absolutely.
And that it's not about, like, in this game of like equality, and it's not, to me, about, it's about equality, and it's not about like patriarchy shifts into matriarchy. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here for this sort of opportunity where we each shine in our own ways, which might mean more than the other in some ways, but looking at each other across genders or roles with gratitude and respect.
that no matter what that is, it's not better or worse, and that we all need what we're good at.
Absolutely.
And when we can embrace what we're each good at, then we become a better version of the human race becomes a better version of itself. It's no longer, it's not in a contraction mode, it's in an expansion mode. So what is it, I'm curious, what is it that you think a role is for men that you believe in your heart, and perhaps even for a woman, what you think a woman does the best at or is really shines at?
When we figure out what our vision is and what our goals are, then we can figure out how to get there easier. When we are unclear on what a vision is for our life, then it's going to be unclear on what our roles and responsibilities are, from my experience. I speak from an athletic background point of view, mostly in team sports. You're more of an individual sport, although you had a team, working with you, but you were the driver in the car. There wasn't like 5 people in the car, doing that, but you had a team. And I think of basketball, it's like it's 5 guys on a court, and I'm not going to go up against Shaquille O'Neal because that's not my role. I'm not a 7-foot, beast that can take him on at a center position. My role would be more of a shooting guard because of my uniqueness, my skills, my talents, my physicality, all those things. And if our object of me playing basketball on a team was to win the championship, that was the vision. We're here to play. We're here to win this game. Not saying that you need to win or lose in life, but for the context of this story, you're going to put your teammates in the best position, in the best roles possible in order to go up against the challenges of life.
Yeah.
Whatever the challenges of the other team you're playing against or the challenges of life that you're going up against as a partnership in a relationship. The thing that I love about my girlfriend, Martha, is that she has a model of her parents have been married for 40 years. And unless they're fooling all of us, they seem like they're incredibly in love. They are joking and are playful and loving and kind to one another. They're not, passive aggressive and angry and dismissive. There's this, but her mother has a specific role that she plays in the relationship that she loves to play that role because she's more talented, more skilled, and a better fit for than her husband. Her husband plays a different role that has his unique skill sets, his unique talents that line up and partner up in a powerful way where they respect each of their roles, just like I would respect someone like Shaquille O'Neal on my team. I couldn't act like I could have those skills because I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not that skilled type of a player in basketball. I have a different talents. And hopefully he would be able to respect my skill set on the basketball court. And in my relationship, she loves the skill set and the role that I play in our in my life, in my business, and in our relationship. And she loves the role she plays in our partnership as well, because we have come together when we started dating, and I said, this is what I want. This is my vision for my life. This is what I see my life becoming in the future. This is everything I did in my past where I messed up and made mistakes. I'm going to reveal everything to you. This is where I'm at now, and this is where I'm heading in the future. I'm very clear on my vision for my relationship future, what I want based on this season of life. And she said, this is what I want, and here are my values and my vision. We did exercises. We went to Sedona, and I said, let's do an exercise where you write on a piece of paper all your values, everything that matters to you. I'm going to write, on my piece of paper in my journal, all the things that matter to me, and then we're going to come unbiased together and see if they match up. About 90% of them matched up from the things we wanted to do, how we wanted to live our life, our lifestyle, like all these different things. And the things that didn't line up, I go, are these deal breakers for us?
Sure.
Is this super important for you and you need to have this? And if I don't care about that, are you okay with it? And there were no deal breakers in terms of the 10% of things that weren't on the same list. They were very similar to what we had already talked about. So I said, even with that, we we still may not work out. Even though our values are lined up and our vision seems to be lined up, time will tell over time if we can play well as a team. Just like in basketball, you got to play well as teammates in order to see if you can accomplish the goals that you have for that season. And so, and that takes, in my opinion, I use everything with sports analogies, having a great coach. And me having a great coach of my mind and my emotions and my health, and her having a great coach of her mind, her emotions, and her health, where we are both accountable to our work ethic, our energy, our attitude. On a basketball team, I've been on teams where some of the guys are incredible freaks of nature, talented beyond belief, could jump out of the gym, dunk, shoot, run so fast, way better athletes than me, but had horrible work ethic, horrible attitude, and didn't work together as a team. They were selfish. They wanted these things. So they went from starters to on the bench, to being a distraction on the bench, to being kicked off the team, even though they were the best athlete on the team.
Let that be a lesson.
So you've got to be willing to, if you're going to be in a relationship, you're talking to a guy who's failed at every relationship because they've all ended, and has learned, because I chose these certain relationships and didn't step up to my boundaries, and I kept trying when it wasn't the right fit, because I didn't communicate my values and my vision early on, and I stayed in for the wrong reasons. So I take full responsibility. Now with that wisdom and that clarity, it's easier for me to see it looking back, because I've gone through that much pain and frustration for myself. But it's because I have a coach, a therapist, who's allowed me to go through multiple exercises, just like you're talking about, and experience it and be like, okay, well, moving forward, what is it that I really need? I need to play my role, my part, and be clear on my values and my vision and lifestyle. And if the other person isn't aligned, then there's nothing wrong with that person. We're just not the right fit. So don't get committed in the first place.
Right.
And
like you got vulnerable early, and you're just like, look, okay, instead of carrying on and abandoning yourself, which is what ends up happening by going, oh, we'll just see. It's like you kind of stepped up to the plate and went, okay, I really like you. I know we're 6 months in, but here is like my boundaries.
I did that like 2.5 months. Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. Here's something.
You might lose them. And that's the game, right? You might.
And being okay.
Push things along.
Exactly. And I think I was never okay with like losing something.
Yeah.
And losing the person, losing them loving me, and the connection and the friendship we built, because if it doesn't work out, then maybe we won't speak together. And I was always afraid that I wasn't going to be enough, or that I was going to be alone, or that they would be hurt, or they would judge me, or they would think I was a bad guy because I didn't choose them. Yeah. And so in this relationship was the most interesting thing I'd ever done. It was a decision I made, and we both made. And I started reflecting on all the previous relationships. There was, let's say, sexual activity early in every relationship, right? And that sexual activity created a chemical bond of this feels good and there's great connection, and there was no conversation about values or vision or lifestyle. It was, we're having fun. This is a great time. We're experiencing life together, and we've got this chemical bond. And this time I said, listen, there's not going to be any of that, and we can hang out, and we spent, I mean, when I say there wasn't any of that, I mean, my friends are like in shock, especially my guy friends. I'm going to get vulnerable here, but it was almost 3 months. I spent 40 nights next to her without that activity going on. And talk about self-discipline for me as someone who's driven by, who wants that a lot.
Sure.
I was just like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it until I find out like where this is going. And if we are in alignment on our values and our vision, which you could call roles and responsibilities towards your vision in life. And so again, I feel great, right? Even with all this happening, it doesn't mean like it's going to be happy forever and ever.
Right. That's just a realistic version.
Who knows? Who knows what can happen? But I feel the most at peace. It feels incredible. And I feel like I'm laying a foundation, brick after brick, of possibilities of something greater. than doing the things in reverse that I've always done. So it's been a beautiful experience, but it was not easy, and I had to break certain habits. So
damn,
that's my thoughts on roles and relationships.
And everyone is different, right? It just
Absolutely.
doesn't mean that, it doesn't always have to mean that there's a macro of each. I mean, it's just kind of what is yours. And it's about respecting the other person, because it's when you can't respect the other person for being amazing at something, it means that you're insecure yourself. And you need to do some reflecting.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for checking back in.
Of course.
Love catching up with you. I think that you're just an incredible leader. I think you're just such a voice. And as I told you when I first met you, like, because of our conversation that we had, I was promoting my book, which was now almost 4 years ago. And I did 3 podcasts and you were one of them. And I was like, I really love that format. And you totally were what led me into being like, I think I want to do a podcast.
That's great.
And so it's truly it's really the most fulfilling thing I do. So you're leading in more ways than you know, I think.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for the good work. And thanks for the insight for the new book. I have no doubt that it'll be incredibly beneficial for a lot of people, and especially for men who, I think can really use a guide like you.
For sure.
Who's willing to get into these spaces, these sticky spaces where culture hasn't always been so accepting or understanding, maybe.
Sure.
So thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a flawed human being, getting feedback all the time, trying to just improve my life. So
You're doing it.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.